With the second pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Chase Young, defensive end, Ohio State.
But you know, as they say, hail to the Redskins. Let's roll, man. Let's go.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report. So, we got a lot to discuss tonight. Among the topics, and I'm pretty sure you guys out there will get to them via super chats, calls, or comment section, what may have you. The Redskins re-signed Aaron Colvin, the cornerback. The Redskins, the media members were able to get to some more of the draft picks and some of the undrafted guys, most notably Thaddeus Moss, which kind of prompted me, listening to him talk, prompted me to want to talk about the tight end position in particular tonight. And at some point, we're going to go through each and every single position on this Redskins roster with a fine-tooth comb and kind of talk about the players that are there and the guys that have a realistic shot of making this football team whenever it is they hit training camp and get this thing kicked off, whether it happens in July like it's supposed to, in August, or maybe even in September. We don't know if it'll happen at all, but when it does, we'll be ready, and we would have talked about each and every single position. We're going to start that tonight by talking about the tight end position. And I'll play you a clip from a little soundbite, I should say. Probably the most pertinent thing that I thought Thaddeus Moss said. It kind of gives you a little insight into his thought process and where he is mentally right now. And I like the way that he speaks and the things that he is saying. So there's a bit of a chip on his shoulder. We'll play that a little bit later on in the show. But obviously the breaking news just happened not even 30 minutes ago. You know, I'm over here doing some draft work. And, you know, on my phone pops up that, you know, two guys in the division, well, one guy in the division, an ex-Redskin, and Quinton Dunbar, and the other DeAndre Baker, corner of the New York Giants, a first-round pick last year by the Giants out of Georgia, are both being brought up on 4 felony counts of aggravated assault and robbery, armed robbery. I read the entire affidavit. It is pretty damn alarming to read what was actually in the affidavit and the account given by one of the eyewitnesses. It's not looking good for either one of those guys right now. And, you know, there is no silver lining in this, okay? But as a Redskins fan, okay, I can say that for the first time in a long time, we actually came on the right side of something. You know, when this thing first happened, when the Redskins traded Quinton Dunbar, I, among a lot of Redskins fans, I wasn't upset at the fact that they traded Quinton Dunbar. I was ready to part ways with him after he continued to spout off. Something had to be done. I just felt like we didn't get enough compensation. That's essentially how I felt. But Rivera and Kyle Smith quickly came out and said, look, we got what we felt like was good compensation for Quinton Dunbar. And if that was good enough for them, it was good enough for me. I felt like he was worthy of a 3rd-round pick, you know, but they got a 5th-round pick. Okay, what are you going to do? So we moved on from him, and, you know, everything was fine. And then this happens. And you know what was the most refreshing thing? And again, there are no silver linings in this. I hope that situation gets ironed out. And, you know, I wish them nothing but the best, but you can't go around doing the things. If what was reported and what was stated in that affidavit is true, you can't go around doing those types of things. And, you know, I'll get to something in a second that I read in that affidavit that really troubled me in a second. But I'll just say this. The best thing that I saw with this whole situation as it flooded the timeline on Twitter and even on IG, people sending me direct messages, you know, telling me, oh, did you see Quinton Dunbar, yada, 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 is that everything that I read said Seahawks cornerback, Quinton Dunbar. Seahawks cornerback, Quinton Dunbar. Seahawks cornerback, Quinton Dunbar. None of them said Redskins cornerback or even ex-Redskins cornerback. Everything said Seahawks cornerback. That was so refreshing because if this had happened a month and a half ago, this thing would have said Redskins cornerback, Quinton Dunbar. And then you would have gotten nothing for Quinton Dunbar because his value would have went completely to the ground. It would have hit rock bottom, and you would have probably had to release him at that point. So the Redskins actually did some good in getting something for him. We didn't know this was going to take place, but at the end of the day, it's just refreshing to know that the Redskins didn't make a mistake. They didn't have a misstep here. They got rid of a guy that didn't want to be here, and it's benefiting them now because he's gotten himself into some big-time trouble, and it's going to drag the Seahawks and the Giants and their whole organization through the mud until that thing gets resolved. Meanwhile, we're sitting here in the clear pointing and saying, that could have been us. Phew! But this is why we've said in Ron We Trust, or as I like to say, Ron's plan. Ron's plan. It's being set into motion. You talk about culture, and we've said that word probably more times this offseason than you've probably said it in your entire life. I know I've said the C word more times in the last 6 months than I have. Well, 6 is too broad because Ron wasn't with us in December. Ron wasn't with us in November. I've said the word culture at least more times than I've said it in my entire life in the last 3 months than I have my entire life. And that's all due to Ron Rivera and the known culture change that we needed here in the nation's capital. We're getting it with guys like Quinton Dunbar being dismissed, guys like Trent Williams being traded that don't want to be here, and a guy like Monte Nicholson with his own demons off the field that was dismissed as well. They're bringing in guys that they feel confident are going to represent the Redskins the right way, not only on the field, but off the field as well. We've got an image to repair, not just on the field, which has been terrible. The product has been horrible, but off the field as well. You guys heard what Urban Meyer had to say. That was making its rounds in the media circles this past week about how he talked about just how terrible of an organization this was and how bad the culture was and how he's got guys in the building telling him just how bad it is. And you can't blame Dwayne. And I love the fact that he came to the defense of Dwayne Haskins. And I think what happened with that situation, and we may end up talking about that in greater detail tonight, is that he just got sick and tired of people piling on Dwayne, as I have, which is why I went on a rant about 3 months or 3 weeks to a month ago about Dwayne and why is this whole narrative about Dwayne Haskins coming out, and then some of it from Redskins fans, which I just can't fathom for the life of me why that is. In any event, man, it's refreshing to not be associated with that entire situation that's going on with Quinton Dunbar. Again, I wish him nothing but the best. Can't go around doing the things that reportedly he and DeAndre Baker have been suspected of doing. And if there is any validity to that, then they need to be punished accordingly. However, I wish them nothing but the best, but I'm just glad we're not associated with that in any way, shape, or form, nor capacity. So for the first time this offseason, I think the first of many to come, we got us a dub, guys. Celebrate! All right? For once, we didn't take an L on something. All right? We got a dub. I feel really good about that. I don't know about you. So, in any event, let's, oh yeah, and I said I wanted to talk about something in that, affidavit that I read. Let me knock that out real quick, and then I'll set the table, and then we'll get the show kicked off. In that affidavit that I read, it said that Quinton Dunbar and DeAndre Baker, and I don't know if this is individually or combined, that the two of them lost $70,000 gambling like 1 or 2 nights previous to when this party that they actually were reported brandishing weapons and threatening to shoot someone and robbing them at gunpoint and taking their valuables, most notably watches and money. They reportedly had lost $70,000 not too long before that. Gambling. Now, look, I don't know how true that is. I just know this. I can't stand when guys, and first of all, I hate when guys are gambling that kind of money away. But if you got it, that's fine. It's your money. You do whatever you want to do with it. When you don't have that kind of money, though, I hate to see it. I really do. And I'm not here to speak on another man's coin, okay? I don't know what either one of those guys have in the bank account. I don't know what their money looks like. But if you're robbing dudes at gunpoint for whatever they got in their pockets and you telling them, hey, run it, and you're taking their rollies, and you can't have but so much in the damn bank account if you're doing that shit. So, look, why are you out here gambling money you don't have, bruh? You was over here pissy. You were over here pissy at the Redskins for not giving you a deal, right? Giving you the money that you feel like you deserve. This is not the way you go about getting it. And you damn sure are not in a position, if you don't have the money, to be gambling it away and losing 70 G's. Like, that's the kind of stuff that kills me. If you've ever watched the documentary Broke, you really get an insight into some of these players trying to keep up with the Joneses. When they don't have it, look, there's certain guys in the locker room, they got it, all right? They're on that second contract. They're making a boatload of money. They're making in one check what you're probably making in 6 or 7 checks. Or maybe your entire salary in 1 or 2 checks. You can't do what they do. You know, in that documentary, you would hear about guys trying to keep up with some of the high-profile players in that locker room, trying to stunt. If you don't have it like that, you can't do that. So Quinton Dunbar losing 70K, whether it's in a casino or at a dice game or at a card table, wherever, it doesn't matter. I don't think Quinton Dunbar's bank account, his pockets are built that way to withstand losing 70K. If you're watching the documentary on Jordan right now in The Last Dance, which I'm absolutely madly in love with that documentary because that's me all day long. I was a massive Bulls fan, more in particular Scottie Pippen fan growing up. And so this is me reliving my childhood. I remember all of these things, and then they're throwing in some new things for me. But one of the things that they were talking about on the plane, team busing on the planes, is that the big high rollers would be gambling in the back of the plane, and the guys would be playing for like $1 or $2 up in the front of the plane. And Jordan was so competitive that he really didn't care about the money. He just wanted the competitive juices to get flowing, and he wanted to be able to win at something. But they knew not to go in the back because they said our pockets weren't deep like that. Hell, Scotty, when you find out that he was like the 180th player paid in the league, probably shouldn't have been back there. But he got endorsements and stuff. Let's not act like Scotty wasn't making money off the court. I know a lot of you understand that, but still, you gotta be able to stay in your damn lane. Sounds like Quinton Dunbar may have swerved out of his lane a bit, and maybe that caused him to get a little desperate and do some things he probably shouldn't be doing. I'm not here to judge, and I don't know the whole story, so I can't confirm nor deny any of it. I just know what I read is pretty damning, and if it's true, that's a shame, and I hope that they are able to get their acts together moving forward. Nonetheless, wow, that's a hell of a way to start off the show, I must say. I had no intentions of coming here and talking about Quinton Dunbar and his armed robbery charges for the first 10 minutes of the show, but then again, we didn't expect that to happen, but it did. But he's not a Redskin, so that's not our problem any longer. But again, I wish him nothing but the best. Anyhow, you guys know how this works. I thank everybody for joining me tonight on the Redskins Report Live. We got a lot to discuss. I want to get knee deep in the tight end position because we all perceive this to be our weakest position on our team right now. We probably view it as the one position where we don't have a penciled in starter. And if you ask 5 different people, you may get 3 different answers as to who's the starting tight end of this football team come week 1. There's only 7 guys on the roster at the tight end position. So if I'm asking 5 people and I'm getting 3 different answers, that's a problem. All right, most teams can identify who their starting tight end. Some teams have 2 or even 3 in the case of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that could start for most teams in the league. We don't have a single one that we're confident in. Maybe that's something that we're overestimating or underestimating, depending on who you talk to. We'll talk about that here in a bit, but I want to set the table first. Thank you guys for joining me. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Follow me on IG, Louie T Network _ as you see down at the bottom of this screen. Also, follow me on Twitter at Louie T Network on Twitter. Make sure you're following me there as well. If you're watching this video, 3 ways to contact the show. Now, in the last couple of weeks, haven't had a lot of activity via the chat or the phone lines because the super chats have been lit. And I love that. I want that to continue. But super chats are the way to go. If you want your voice to be heard, super chats are the way to go, because that's going to get you on the program. No doubts about it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. All right. That jumps straight to the front of the line. If you super chat, you're going to have your comment read and we'll discuss it. Or if you're just donating just to donate, I appreciate that greatly as well. But super chats come first. Second in line are the phone lines. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and open up the phone lines. Numbers now on the screen. And let's just go through the checklist for calling in quickly. First and foremost, make sure your volume is up on your phone so we can hear you clearly and concisely. Make sure that you turn down whatever device you are watching this on so we don't hear the echo in the background. Thirdly, make sure you know what you want to say. All right, don't call in like you're my homeboy and you're calling to chop it up with me and hello, what's going on? And then it's silence. Know what you want to say, get in, get out so we can discuss. All right, and then fourth, make sure that, I think I said everything I needed to say. So that's if you call in. And then obviously the last line of communication is the chat. In the chat discussion, make sure you use the hashtag LouieTLive if you want to have your comment read on the air. So with that being said, let's get to the proceedings this evening and get to any super chats that may be on the air right now. And I got my first one of the night from my man JP. Thank you for the super chat, JP. Greatly appreciated. My man John Perez writes, do you think we're going to keep 3 or 4 tight ends? Great question. And you know what? That's the perfect segue into our tight end discussion tonight. I was doing some research on the tight end position under Ron Rivera in Carolina. I went all the way back to 2015, their Super Bowl season, and I went forward for each of the next 4 seasons with Rivera in Carolina, 15, 16, 17, 18. Well, 5, actually, because I went 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. And I looked at his roster, his final 53-man roster, each of those seasons. Now, here's the thing. The active roster has gone up by a couple of players. So there may be space for yet another tight end. But how he chose to operate for the vast majority of his time in Carolina was 3 tight ends, okay? Never 4, in that 5-year span. So just recently, the last 5 years in Carolina, he didn't keep a 4th tight end. It was 3 tight ends. That was it. So, and also what was interesting is he also had 3 quarterbacks in each of those years as well. Now, some of that may have been because of the injury history to Cam Newton, but 3 quarterbacks and 3 tight ends. You could easily go 2 quarterbacks and 4 tight ends if you'd like, or you could shave off some fat and trim off some fat at another position to allow you to carry yet another tight end. But with the quarterbacks being as young as they are, I wouldn't be shocked to see 3 quarterbacks on this roster. You got Dwayne, you got Kyle Allen, and they went out and they signed Steven Montez. Never, ever trust a man with 2 first names. As a PFA right after the draft. He's an intriguing prospect. I talked about him when I broke him and Thaddeus Moss down, 2 guys that I thought, had a realistic shot of making this football team. Not so much Steven Montez, but when I go back and I look at the history of Rivera and how many quarterbacks he elected to keep on his roster, he routinely kept 3 quarterbacks. And they were young too. It's not like, it was one veteran and then it was a young guy that was an understudy behind Cam Newton. It was some young guys, there were, the first couple of years that I looked, there was Derek Anderson there. Of course, wily veteran right behind Cam Newton. And when Newton would miss a game or two, Anderson would step in and then you'd have the other young guy on the roster. But for the most part, you're talking about, the last few years in Carolina at least, in about 18 and 19 in particular, you're talking about 3 quarterbacks on the roster, and 2 of them are young guys. Tyler Heineke was there for a brief spell, and he got some playing time. And then obviously Kyle Allen has been there the last couple of years. So there were young quarterbacks on that football team. So that's not out of the realm of possibility to see the Redskins have 3 quarterbacks. That's not something we've seen them do the last few years with Jay Gruden here, or hell, for Jay Gruden's entire tenure here. It's usually been 2 quarterbacks on the roster, but you could see 3 this year. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but as far as the tight end position is concerned, it was 3 for the vast majority of Ron Rivera's tenure. So I'm thinking that you're only going to keep 3. We've got 7 on the roster right now. I think you're going to end up having to trend that 7 down to 3. And then you're probably going to have 2 or 3 of those guys be on the practice squad, depending on how impressed they are with those guys. Now, again, you're going to subject those guys to the rest of the league. And if they like what they see from some of these guys, and with this being an abbreviated preseason and potentially offseason training camp in particular, you may not get a lot of these guys. And so you may get to hold on to your stuff more so this offseason than in previous offseasons, where you would be more exposed to other teams on film in the preseason with 4 games. You may only have 1 or 2 preseason games this year, and you may not get a lot of tape out there. And so it may be easier for the Redskins to be able to hold on to some of these guys. But I think you're going to see the Redskins retain 3 of these tight ends this season. With the extended rosters, maybe you keep a 4th. We'll see. Maybe that's one of the positions they decide to keep an extra body at. When I started looking at this roster, I looked at a couple of positions, and I'm thinking they may end up spending an extra roster spot on other positions like linebacker. That's a crowd. You want to talk about a crowded position on the football team? We talk about wide receiver a bunch, and the running back position is extra crowded. That linebacker position, man, those linebacker positions in that room, man, it's loaded. Not saying necessarily we got the best talent in the league, but it's a bunch of guys, and they signed a bunch of dudes. It's a lot of competition in that linebacker room. Can't wait till we get to linebackers to discuss that position in particular. But in any event, thank you for the super chat, JP. I think we're going to keep 3 tight ends. That's subject to change, however. It could be 4. See if we got another super chat. And we do. This next super chat is from Darren Long. Thank you for the super chat, Darren Long. Greatly appreciate it. My man Darren writes, do you think there is any chance Brandon Sheriff gets moved over to right tackle and let all the others fight it out to fill in the other guard spots? I don't think so. I don't think there's any way possible the Redskins are moving. First of all, we don't have a void at right tackle. We don't have a vacancy at right tackle. I don't know what the romance is with getting rid of Morgan Moses. And honestly, I don't know where the narrative of Morgan Moses being so terrible came from. Look, he has been predisposed to committing penalties. And it's not like this guy has 5 penalties every game, okay? I think some of that has been blown out of proportion. When we talk about him false starting, he only gets called for that once or twice a game. Now, he false starts 7 or 8 times a game, but he only gets called for 1 or 2 of them. Now, I get it. 1 or 2 a game, that's a lot of damn penalties. And when you look at the statistics, Morgan Moses was among the highest penalized players in the league along the offensive line this season. I think he might have been actually number 1. If not number 1, he was in the top 3. Either way, I understand your gripe with him there, but his play on the field isn't that bad. So this whole notion that we got this big problem at right tackle, as I've mentioned to you guys plenty of times, you can do a lot worse than Morgan Moses at right tackle. Trust me, there are probably 25 other teams that would take Morgan Moses as their starting right tackle in a heartbeat, okay? At least 2/3 of the league, all right? I feel very confident saying at least 2/3 of the league would take Morgan Moses as their right tackle right now, no questions asked, all right? He's not that bad, guys. So stop trying to replace a guy that doesn't need to be replaced. And furthermore, if they're going to replace Morgan Moses, it wouldn't be until next year. He's making too much money. All right, they're not going to move him out of the lineup just to give Brandon Sheriff a chance at right tackle and have that much money sitting on the bench. And they're not in a position to cut him. So it doesn't make sense. Again, if it's not broken, don't try to fix something that doesn't need fixing. We don't need to upgrade right tackle at this very moment. Okay? So with that being said, right tackle is fine. Brandon Sheriff is your right guard. And Chase Roullier is your center. We've got enough issues on the left side not knowing what's going to happen over there. I feel pretty confident that we're going to see Wes Martin at left guard. Now, the real question becomes, who's your left tackle? Is that guy on the roster right now, or is that someone that will have to go out and sign as a veteran? That's the real question. I think they're going to ultimately go with the young guy and just throw him in there and let him play and let him learn and get that on-the-job training. And if that's the case with Sadiq Charles, so be it. But at the end of the day, I don't think we have an issue at right tackle. So Sheriff isn't going to kick outside to tackle. First of all, the Redskins tried that already. If Sheriff was a competent tackle, he would have been playing tackle already. They drafted him to be a tackle. Okay, they drafted him to be a left tackle, but we had a left tackle, so they said, well, let's play him at right tackle. That didn't work, and they quickly kicked him inside to guard. So they've tried that experiment already. It did not work. He's a guard, and he's a damn good one. Again, let's not try to reinvent the wheel. This just reminds me of when we had Ty and Secchi, and people were like, hey, we should kick Trent Williams inside the guard and play Ty and Secchi at left tackle. Why in the hell would you do that? Okay, now you're weakening one position. You may be getting stronger at guard if he's even a good guard, which I wouldn't doubt that Trent Williams would have the athletic capability to play guard and play it at a very high level. But now you're weakening the left tackle position, which is the most important position on the entire offensive line. So, again, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but we're fine at right tackle. Brandon Sheriff is a guard and a damn good one of the best in the league. Why take him from a position where he's one of the best in the league at and put him at a position where he may be bottom half of the league as a tackle and may struggle? Just doesn't make any sense. No, Sheriff is not kicking outside to tackle. He's going to stay at guard. And like I said, we don't have any problems center over on the right side. Where our problems lie and our question marks are from the left side of the line. Left guard, left tackle. And I feel really confident that we've got a left guard on the roster already. Left tackle is debatable. We'll find out what the Redskins decide to do, whether it's one of the young guys on the team, Cornelius Lucas, or it's Sadiq Charles if he's ready to rock and roll, or if it's somebody that's not even on the roster right now. That remains to be seen. But thank you for the super chat, Darren Long. Greatly appreciate it. Got another super chat. This one from Barrett Downing, my man BD, as always, representing and holding your man down. Appreciate you, BD. My man Barrett writes, so glad to be on the high side of the BS. Keep grinding, my brother. Amen to that one, BD. Amen indeed. So glad that we are not on the wrong side of this Quinton Dunbar saga. And you know what's crazy and ironic is that he literally did a media spot with the Seattle Seahawks beat reporters this morning. All right, this morning, this man was fielding questions from the Seattle Seahawks media members, and literally 6 hours later, this guy is wanted for armed robbery and assault with a deadly weapon. So, I mean, it's crazy how quickly these things develop. So, again, just like you said, so glad that we're on the right side of this. But this just continues to grow the legend of Ron Rivera and Ron's plan. Ron's plan, okay? It's growing, man. This legend. The man hasn't even had a game on the sidelines yet, and Ron Rivera is growing to mythical. He's growing to mythical proportions, all right? We'll see what he's able to do when he actually starts marching along the sidelines, if he's getting wins or not. But right now, I tell you what, this has been a really good offseason for Ron Rivera and this Redskins organization. It's been refreshing, to say the least. Thomas Forthside, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciated, Thomas. Thank you so much for your contribution. Got another super chat. This one from Trevor Patch. Thank you for the super chat, Trevor Patch. Greatly appreciate it. My man Trevor writes, think Ron keeps more running backs than tight ends because of versatility. So when you look at what they've done in the past, he's always been a little bit more inclined to keep more backs than tight ends. But it was nothing for him to just keep 3 tight ends, 3 backs. But he's usually been more inclined to keep more running backs than tight ends. So yes, and I'll take it a step further. Because of the versatility of so many of these backs and the question marks surrounding some of these backs, I think he's going to be more likely. And then also you got to take into consideration what his coordinator wants him to do. Scott Turner is going to probably have a lot of input as to how he wants the running back room to look. And if he says, hey, we can trim off some fat here, trim off some fat there, then you may see them trim off a little bit of fat and only go with 3 backs. But I'm pretty sure Scott Turner was one of the driving forces behind them going out and getting Antonio Gibson. They probably viewed him as a guy that could give them some Christian McCaffrey vibes. So he probably helped spearhead the pick of Antonio Gibson. Not saying that they did it because, Scott Turner said so, but I think he had a lot of input there where they said, Scott, you really like this guy? And he's like, hell yeah, this is a guy that could really change the game for us offensively. There's so many things we can do with him. We could use him similar to the way we used Christian back in Carolina, and that probably was all Ron needed to hear. And so, J.D. McKissic is another guy that kind of brings some of that to the table as well. Don't dismiss him either. But obviously you got AD. And I'm not sure how they feel about AD, but I've talked to Panthers fans on numerous occasions who have told me that Ron Rivera has a soft spot for veteran players in this league. And AD was one of the first guys that he met. If you remember, at his press conference, AD was literally sitting in the front row. And so right after he was done, they met, they talked, they spoke. There's a mutual respect between those two. And so I don't think AD is going anywhere. And so I think AD is the guy you could I'd write his name in pen. Now a guy like Bryce Love, I'd write his name in pencil. I don't know how his recovery process is going or any of that stuff, but I'd write his name in pencil, but that's a guy that I think is going to be around. Guys, I'd feel comfortable writing his name in pen as well, but he's one injury away from potentially not being on the roster, but I feel confident that if he's healthy, he's on the football team. And then, Gibson definitely is on this team. I'd write his name in marker at this point, Antonio Gibson. He's the one guy that I know is going to be on this football team. They just spent the 3rd round pick on him. So when I look at the way the Redskins running back room looks right now, you've got to think that 4 is the minimum. It's the minimum if you're just going off of the 4 guys that we perceive to be in the driver's seat to make this football team in Peterson, Geis, Love, and Gibson. That to me is the baseline there. Now you're looking at the other guys that are trying to crack this roster, Ferguson and McKissic, who they signed in the offseason, also signed the ex-Tampa Bay running back out of Auburn. He's another guy that they're going to throw in the mix. I feel like if barring injuries, I feel like we know the 4 guys that are going to make the team. They could get really frisky and keep 5. But if you're going to keep 5, that last guy on the roster better play some mean special teams. I mean, he better be on every single special teams known to mankind. And so I'm talking about J.D. McKissic, essentially, is what I'm talking about. Because Peyton Barber's the guy from Tampa Bay. He doesn't play a ton of special teams, I don't think, at least. But, J.D. McKissic, if he wants to make this football team, he better be playing he better be on punts, kickoffs, return team. He better be on every damn special team and be tearing it up. Or else I think they're going to probably settle in on 4 guys in the running back room. But, we'll see. Time will tell. And we'll talk about the running back position in depth at some point on this show, for sure. Got another super chat. This one from Brian Haynes. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Brian Haynes. Really do. Thank you for the super chat. My man Brian writes, I know we are talking tight end, but my topic is a bit off. You're fine, brother. He says, so I apologize, but do you see Ron, Jack, and Scott bringing out the full potential of these players unlike the previous regime? Absolutely. And I think that's why I'm so confident about the win total this year. And I know a lot of you are saying, you're confident? You're only giving us 6 wins. That's 3 more than we had last year. We doubled our win total. And I feel like if the ball, and I've already given you this speech, so I don't really need to do this again. But if the ball bounces our way, we stay relatively healthy. The defense is what we think is going to be. Dwayne plays at the level that we think he's capable of playing. Look, this team could win 7, 8 games. I think 8 is the ceiling for this season. 9, you're getting me a little uncomfortable when you start talking 9 games because I just don't see this team responding that way. But hell, crazier things and stranger things have happened. We've seen teams go from basement dwellers to, a 10-win team in the postseason in the first year of a new head coach. Most recently, we saw the Bears do it, win their division after stinking the year previous after hiring Matt Nagy. We saw the Bills do it. They hadn't made the postseason since we were partying like it's 1999. And that means we were a full 2 decades from the last time the Bills had performed in the postseason. And here comes Sean McDermott in his first year as Bills head coach, and he takes them to the postseason. So we've seen this recently where teams were garbage. Hell, Jared Goff was terrible. Sean McVay shows up, the Rams were terrible. Sean McVay shows up, and they win 10 games, and they make the postseason. So, again, I said all of that to say this. It's not impossible, all right? But I have so much confidence in Ron Rivera, Jack Del Rio. The jury's still out on Scott Turner. I don't know about Scott Turner. You don't know about Scott Turner. We don't know about Scott Turner. But one thing is for certain with Scott Turner is that he's got his dad's blood coursing through his veins. He's grown up in football his entire life. He's got a philosophy, okay, that he probably learned from his dad. We know that it's some version of the Air Coryell offense. So we know he's got the ability to do this. Now, at what level is the question? Is he a high-level offensive coordinator to the point where some team is going to want to poach him away from us in a few years and make him a head coach? Or is he a guy like his dad that wasn't really meant to be a head coach, but probably more so just a coordinator? And that's fine too. All right. But at some point, we're going to find out about Scott Turner. But when I talk about guys getting the most out of talent, I'm going to leave Scott Turner out of that discussion right now because we just don't know about him. And I just want to solely focus on Rivera and Del Rio. And those guys have a track record of getting the most out of players, having guys wanting to run through walls for them. And for that reason, and that reason alone, this Redskins team is good for at least 6 victories this season. So when you ask me, do I think that they're going to be able to get the most out of these players this year? You damn right I feel that way. And I feel like for the first time in a long time, really since Joe Gibbs 2.0, we've got a coach. I shouldn't say that because I thought Mike Shanahan was here and Mike was good at getting the most out of players. You saw what him and Kyle were able to do with Robert Griffin III. I felt like, and Alfred Morris too. I felt like if we were able to keep that whole band together, that we would have saw some great things in Washington happen. But we all know how that saga ended. At the end of the day, it's been a long time from Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan and company and Sean McVay and all those guys being in the organization, which was the last time was 2013, to where we are now. It's been over 7 years since we've had a coach that we felt like was capable of taking pedestrian to average to above average talent and turning them into really good football players. And we have that in Ron Rivera. I feel like we have a coach that's, for the first time in a long time, because I never felt like this with Jay Gruden. I never felt like we had a disciplined football team. I thought we were always heavily penalized. I always felt like we were ill-prepared. We didn't make halftime adjustments, things of that nature. Those were things that bothered us as fans, that we didn't make adjustments in-game. Jay was notorious for scripting out the first 15 plays, and we'd come out like gangbusters, and man, we'd look good those first 15 plays that were scripted. After that, though, after that team was able to make adjustments and Jay didn't have his scripted plays to go to, that's when we would struggle. I mean, it's not a secret. We know about all the things that troubled this Redskins team over the years. So when you talk about Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio, I look at the Redskins defense by itself. Forget about the offense, just the defense. It's been an underachieving unit. All right, there's too much talent up front. Look, the back end is a mess. We don't know what the hell we have in the secondary right now. But when you look at the defensive line, even without Chase Young on the scene, even without Montez Sweat, before those guys even showed up, should have been enough talent that this team wasn't as bad as they were on defense. You know, if we had just a third a better defense. You know, not even if we just had a eighth better defense, okay? If instead of us being the 32nd ranked defense like we were back in 2017, if that was just a 24th ranked defense, we make the postseason, guys. Could you imagine in 2016 if the defense wasn't dead last? If they were 24th in the league, we would have been 12-4. We would have been 11-5. We were that good in 2016. All right? Honestly speaking, if this defense had a Jack Del Rio 4 years ago, this Redskins team would have been in the playoffs probably 2 out of the last 4 seasons. But the problem is we didn't. We had Greg Minuski and our defense was trash. So yes, I do think Rivera, I do think Del Rio, they're going to get the most out of these players. I sincerely believe that. So thank you for the super chat, Brian Haynes. Got another super chat. This one from Ben Hoff. Thank you for the super chat, Ben Hoff. Greatly appreciated, Ben Hoff. Ben writes, who would your best case, no bust, player comps for the Redskins draft picks be, i.e. the common young to Peppers? I think I've given all of those out, with the exception of the offensive linemen. I usually don't comp offensive linemen to other offensive linemen. I stay away from that. I just break down what I see with the O-linemen. But I think if you watch the video that I did, and I've got the Redskins draft right here, so I should be able to pull it up. But I think I comped everybody. But obviously, you've already named the most common one was J-Pep, Chase Young to J-Pep, and that's the comp that I have, which is what I gave in my video. Antonio Gibson, to me, is like, I have him as like a Percy Harvin type of player. But you know, the best comp that I can think of for him, I put in my notes, Percy Harvin, and I got another guy here, is Deebo Samuel. That's the guy that he looks like to me the most. Remember, Deebo Samuel was the guy that looked like a running back. He's sort of a wing back. The guy you can throw it to, motion him out, can give him the football. The 49ers used him in all kinds of creative ways. I see Antonio Gibson, similar type of body type to Deebo Samuel, similar run after catch capabilities, physical with the ball in his hands, turns into a running back when he gets the football in his hands. I see a lot of the same principles and same attributes with Antonio Gibson. So my best comp for Gibson would be Deebo Samuel, even though he's going to play more so the running back position than wide receiver. I see him as a Deebo Samuel type of guy. So then the next pick for the Redskins that I would talk about, because Sadiq Charles is an offensive lineman, I don't do comps for those guys, would be Antonio Gandy-Golden, the Gandy Man, AGG. I likened him to Reggie Williams. And you know, if you want a more recent comp, maybe a Mike Williams, you know, but I think he's more Reggie Williams. Reggie Williams from the Jacksonville Jaguars, out of the University of Washington. I think he was a first-round draft pick back in 2004, if I'm not mistaken. He had a big game against the Redskins one year when we played the Jaguars. I remember Sean Taylor hitting him in the end zone, knocking his helmet off, but he caught the football, got up and shook his dreads like this. He was a big physical wide receiver. I always will remember there was this mic'd up with Jack Del Rio. It's funny we're talking about Jack because he was the head coach of the Jaguars at the time when they made Reggie Williams the first round pick out of Washington. And he was a big 6'4", 225-pound, you know, wide receiver. And the referee said, man, that's an impressive, you know, tight end you got there, coach. And Jack Del Rio was so giddy. Oh, my God. He's like, hey, that's not a tight end. That's our first-round pick. He's a wide receiver. And so they had him mic'd up before one of the preseason games, and Jack was so giddy because the referee thought that he was so big, he was a tight end, but he was really a wide receiver. That's who I liken Antonio Gandy-Golden to Reggie Williams. And Reggie had some really productive years. You know, one in particular, I think like in 07 or something like that, 06, 07. One of those years in there, he was really good. So, that's who I likened him to. Keith Ishmael, no comp there. Khaleke Hudson. I really don't have a comp for him. I didn't put as much thought into him being undersized backer. But I really don't know. I can't give you a comp for him because I didn't put as much thought into that one. Same with Cameron Curl. because he's a guy that I really didn't like. I really felt like the one guy that I thought the Redskins dropped the ball on was Cameron Curl, because I felt like there were other safeties in this draft that they could have had other than Cameron Curl. I just felt like this was a pick that they could have made. At two, I put down in my notes, at 216 overall, J.R. Reed, the safety out of Georgia, was still available. Like, that's the guy I would have taken here if you wanted to wait until the 7th round to take a guy. And I'm thinking they like Cameron Curl's upside, and maybe that's what you do in the 7th round. You take guys with upside, but I'm not a Cameron Curl guy. I just didn't see it. So normally I want to get excited about a 7th round pick. Like, hey, look, if not for fill in the blank, this guy might have been fill in the blank. But because of fill in the blank, and whether you're talking injuries or suspensions or grades, or, that's what you do. You take a flyer on a guy that had red flags in the 7th round. That's what you do. But he's really talented. But because of XYZ, he didn't perform at the level that his talents say that he should have. That's not Cameron Curl for me. So, and yes, he converted from cornerback to safety. So maybe they're thinking to themselves, hey, he's only been playing the safety position for 2 years. With more experience and more time and more seasoning, he'll be much better. Maybe that's the right mentality and the right mindset to have, and maybe they're right and I'm wrong. I just didn't see it. But then again, I didn't see it with Monte Nicholson. If you go back and watch my draft wrap-up for the Redskins, 4 years ago with Monte, I told you I thought Monte was soft. He was anything but soft here with the Redskins. That's part of the reason that his career was cut short here, was that he was too damn physical. And he didn't know how to hit. And he was reckless. And he got concussions. And he hurt his shoulder. So, we get this stuff wrong too. I get this stuff wrong. I'm not right all the time. And then James Smith-Williams, another guy that, again, when you get into the 7th round, not a lot of comps are being thrown out for these players, because I'm not giving that much thought to them, because I don't expect these guys to stick around. And so I'm not thinking about a comp for these players in particular, because, again, I'm not expecting them to stick around. Usually, the guys that go in the first 4 rounds of the draft, those are the guys I'm thinking about a serious comp for, because those are the guys I expect to be around. So I hope that helps. I do have a comp for Steven Montez, because I thought he was going to get drafted, and he didn't. I was actually surprised. I shouldn't be surprised, because his inconsistency was alarming, but he's got a ton of talent, and I thought someone was going to take a flyer on him, but they didn't. But I comped him to Josh Freeman or Jay Cutler. To me, he reminds me of both of those players. Probably more Josh Freeman than Jay Cutler, but because of the athleticism, the arm talent, and the frame, there's a lot of Jay Cutler comparisons from that standpoint, but and some of the boo-boos and the mistakes where you go, come on, dude. But I think he's more Josh Freeman than he is Jay Cutler. And for Thaddeus Moss, I comped him to Algie Crumpler. I talked about him as the Atlanta Falcons tight end when Michael Vick was in Atlanta. Algie Crumpler was one hell of a tight end, man. Big guy, not very tall, wide body, but knew how to separate, knew how to make plays in the red zone. And I think Thaddeus Moss has a lot of those same capabilities at the next level. So hopefully that helps. Thank you for the super chat, Ben Hoff. Greatly appreciate it. Got another super chat. This one from DMV Fan 123. Thank you for the super chat, DMV Fan 123, who writes, "If Ron don't trust you, ... then your ass gotta go. All right, because that's Ron's plan. Ron's plan. And I tell you right now, had Quinton Dunbar not sounded off, he would have been on this roster. I don't think Ron Rivera came in with the idea of moving on from Quinton Dunbar. Had Dunny shut his mouth and went, because Rivera has made this abundantly clear, and I actually agree with him. I get where he's coming from. He said, look, I don't know any of these players, and we got clarification because, remember, Dunny spouted that out on one of his first tweets when he said he wanted to be traded, when he first demanded to be traded through Josina Anderson. One of the first things Dunny said was Rivera told him, I don't know you, you don't know me. And Dunny kind of ran with that. Like, I don't know him, he don't know me. That's cool. Let me go. That was Dunny's thing. And Rivera, and that was the kind of mindset that Dunny had, and that was the mindset Rivera had. And we got clarification from Rivera during the draft when he pretty much said, look, I don't know any of these players. I don't know how any of these guys are going to fit in our culture, how they're going to fit in our scheme, how they play for us. We're going to ask them to do something totally different than what they were doing under the last couple of regimes. Okay, excuse me. From a schematic standpoint, we're doing something totally different. We're bringing a base 4-3 here. They were playing in a 3-4. Guys that were standing up in a 2-point stance, they're now going to have their hands in the dirt. Guys that were playing inside backer now I'm going to be playing outside backer. There's a lot of different things that are going to transpire. It's a totally different defense, and we don't know how these guys are going to respond to what we're asking them to do. So because of that, we're not extending anybody. I don't know them. They don't know me. We got to get to know these players before we decide that this guy needs to be here for the next 4 years. And so, again, outside of Kendall Fuller, not many guys received a deal longer than 2 years. All right. And nobody got re-up. Ryan Kerrigan didn't get a new deal. We're still waiting on Brandon Sheriff to get a new deal. But outside of Kendall Fuller's 4-year deal, nobody got a big deal. Nobody's got a long-term contract here. So what they essentially have said is that we want to see what you guys are about before we make that long-term commitment. Because if we sign you based off of what you've done in the past, we get here thinking that this is the player we're going to get. And then you all of a sudden aren't the guy that we thought we were signing up for. Now we're stuck with you for the next 3 years and we can't get out of the deal. So it makes a ton of sense. So from that standpoint, I don't think that Ron was going to cut ties with Quinton Dunbar. I think he came in thinking, all right, some dead weight right away that we need to shed is Monte Nicholson. He had some off-the-field transgressions and some things that just don't fit in what we think is going to be the culture moving forward. So we're going to go ahead and move on from him right now. I don't think he felt that way about Quinton Dunbar until Quinton Dunbar started running his mouth. Had Quinton Dunbar just been a good soldier and said, look, if he came in and said, hey, Ron, I would like a new deal. And Ron told him, look, we're not giving out any new deals right now. We don't think it's a great time for that. But tell you what, you come in, you bust your ass, you play well. We will reward you. If that conversation would have went like that and Dunbar would have taken that at face value and went back and just chilled, he would have still been a Redskin. So I don't think this is a situation of Ron not trusting him. Ron didn't lose trust in Quinton Dunbar until Quinton Dunbar essentially forced his hand. So we dodged it. Either way, I don't really give a shit how it took place. We dodged a bullet is what we did effectively. So I'm excited about that. All right. See if we got any more super chats. Got another super chat. This one from my man JP. JP writes, do you think Del Rio will run more blitzes in the 4-3? Plus, which side of the line will Chase Young play? I think he'll be on both sides of the line. So I don't think, when you watch him at Ohio State, they rushed him on both sides. That's what you do in today's NFL. You don't just put a guy in one position so that the the offense knows where he is and can account for him at all times. You move him around so that they have to identify where he is at all times. And you also want to create mismatches. Maybe the left tackle is extraordinary, but the right tackle isn't. Well, yeah, then you want to exploit that right tackle. You want to put your best pass rusher against that guy. So you're going to see Chase Young move around. I don't think they're going to have one particular position for him. But if I had to guess, I'd say he'd be lined up on the offense's right, or the left, in front of the left tackle on the defense's right side, on the offense's left side, to start the game. And when you watch him, he was his most dominant rushing off of the defense's right side, offense's left side. But again, him and Montez Sweat are going to be moving around. They're going to, work in Kerrigan, and you're going to see some of Ryan Anderson. And depending on who they decide are going to be the other ends off the edge, you're going to see them work those guys in periodically as well, too. So I think that's how they're going to handle Chase Young initially. It's just he's going to play all over the place. But I think he's going to start out on the left side of the offense, right side of the defense. Now, as far as your other question, will we run more blitzes? That's not what Del Rio ultimately wants to do. He does not want to run a ton of blitzes. Del Rio, most defensive coordinators will tell you that they prefer to keep the action in front of them. And if at all possible, they would like to just rush 4. If you can get pressure with 4, if you can hit home with 4, why send more guys than you need to? And Del Rio's always been a guy that likes to just kind of rush 4 if he can. But if he needs to, he can spice it up a little bit. All right, but Del Rio wants to play any variation of cover 3, cover 4, even some cover 1 with the safety over the top. But for the most part, they're looking to keep everything in front of them. And if they can just rush 4, that's what they're going to do. And we feel like with the front that we have, we should be able to get pressure with just 4. And the elite defenses in the league, that's what they do. They get pressure with 4. And it keeps your back end safe. You're not risking guys, and you're not putting them on an island, and you're not putting them in positions to potentially fail when you man them up, or man up across the board because you're sending 6. You're going to give guys an opportunity to keep the game in front of them, keep the play in front of them. And so I think you're going to see a lot less blitzes, especially early in the season. And then as they figure out what they have and how guys are getting to the quarterback, you may see them, tune up a blitz here or there. And if they go against a young quarterback and he's struggling with blitzes, yeah, they may get creative. They may, tune his ass up a little bit, put him in the microwave and heat him up. But for the most part, if you're playing a veteran quarterback, if they're playing Dak Prescott, if they're playing Carson Wentz, they're probably going to keep it simple because those guys have seen most coverages. You don't want to put and especially against the Cowboys now with all the talent that they're putting out on the field. Offensively, you don't want to put our corners out on an island against their trio of receivers in Lamb, Amari Cooper, and the other guy that they have that was really emerging as a number 2 receiver that's probably going to be now their third option. You don't want to put our corners on those receivers man-to-man across the board. You're going to end up with problems on your hands. So I think, against like a Daniel Jones, he may try to heat Daniel Jones up a bit and show him some things and maybe try to confuse him, especially being that we have the Giants twice early in the season. You can see that, but I don't anticipate a lot of blitzes early on in the season. And maybe overall you won't see a ton of blitzes, especially if the Redskins are hitting home with a 4-man rush. So thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate it. And double up. JP, thank you for doubling up. Got another super chat. This one from Derek B. Appreciate you, Derek B. Thank you for the super chat. My man Derek B writes, Ron recognized and got rid of a guy stuck on stupid. I knew you were going to comment because you were adamant about the entire Dunny situation, and you were really adamant the entire time that Dunny was making a colossal mistake and that he needed to either shut up or be dealt with. And it ultimately ended up being the latter. He was dealt with and dealt in general to the Seattle Seahawks for a 5th-round pick. So I had a feeling you would talk tonight because you were very, very adamant about Dunny and his outspokenness and how he needed to just zip it up or else. And he didn't, and he was shipped out of here. So Ron recognized that he had to go. And Ron's recognized that from the jump with guys that he felt like didn't want to be here, didn't want to be a part of what they were building. And he's moved on from those guys. So I'm glad to see that this one worked out in the favor of the Washington Redskins before we even hit the field. Got another super chat. This one from Joe Millionaire. Thank you for the super chat, Joe Millionaire. Greatly appreciated. My man Joe writes, we dodged a bullet with Dunbar. What an idiot. He is on the run with DeAndre Baker right now. I don't know if he's on the run. They haven't turned themselves in. I'm pretty sure after all the social media heat they're getting and their high-profile nature being NFL players, I'm pretty sure both of them are going to get their attorneys and turn themselves in. Like, they're wanted right now. So this isn't going to turn into an episode of the First 48. Like, they're not going to have to send out the U.S. Marshals to track these guys down. They're not going to have to start banging on doors looking for them and turning up the heat and, finally finding them at their girl's house, They're going to turn themselves in. These aren't average Joes. They're high-profile guys. They're NFL players. They can't hide, okay? So they're going to turn themselves in. They're going to get their attorneys, and they're going to turn themselves in. So I don't think they're on the run. I don't think they're on the run right now. But what a crazy turn of events. And how stupid could you be if you're DeAndre Baker and seriously, and Quinton Dunbar? Like, you're not just some dude out there. You know, your face is recognizable. These people know who you are. How could you be so foolish to think that you could get away with something like this? Now, I don't know the whole backstory. These guys could have robbed them before, and they're just getting their stuff back. That's totally possible. Remember, Sean Taylor got in trouble that way. That guys robbed him for, tried to rob him for his RVs and stole his RVs, and then they came riding up the street with his RVs, and he was like, oh, they think they're going to play me like that? So he got his guns and went and tried to get his shit back, and it turned into a problem. Like, you can't go around the hood brandishing your weapon trying to get your shit back. That's not how it works, but that's how you do it in the streets, So, I don't know. They could have been exacting a little bit of street justice. Like, look, you stole my shit. Now I'm going to go get my chain, my rollie, and my money back. That's probably not what happened. That doesn't sound, when you read the affidavit, it doesn't sound like what happened. But it doesn't matter what happened. How could you be so foolish to do something like this? You're too high profile to think that you're going to get away with something like this. Like, obviously they weren't thinking. But what were you thinking? If I'm their mom, their dad, one of their family members, their lawyer, what are you thinking at that moment? How could you be so stupid? So, I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that. They obviously weren't thinking. That's probably the easiest conclusion to come to, is that they lost their damn minds over a card game. They were probably losing more money. Hell, if you just lost $70K, all right? I know for a fact, if you tell me I just lost 70 racks, 2 nights before, I'm pretty pissed. I'm on edge. And now I'm getting my ass whooped in another card game, and I'm losing some more money, and I look across the table, you got my money, and you got a nice-ass rollie on your wrist. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't put myself in that situation, but, when you're not a rational thinker, you start thinking about irrational things, and he may have done that. You lose that kind of money, you're getting your ass whooped again, you're losing some more money, and all of a sudden now, you flip the table over, and now you want your money plus all the rest of the money he got in his pocket. Matter of fact, you run the money. You got all of y'all run your pockets. Run it right now. Let me get all of those rollies. Take all of that shit off of them. And if anybody moves, shoot their ass. Like, what are you doing? I don't know. I don't know. Stop asking. Thank you for the super chat, Joe Millionaire. Got another super chat. This one is from. This one is from This one is from my man Derek B. Yet again. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Derek B. Greatly appreciate it. My man Derek B. writes, Mo penalties, drive killers. Need him to be better. I get it. I understand where you're coming from. 2nd and 2 turns into 2nd and 7. 3rd and 3 turns into 3rd and 8 when you false start. I understand that concept. Trust me, I do. Those are drive killers, potentially. However, you can do a lot worse than Morgan Moses. Momo has some things he does need to clean up. All right, now you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And Momo is an old dog. All right, him false starting on just about every 3rd down when he's trying to get a jump. I don't think he's going to stop doing that. Him trying to get that, because he doesn't get out of the blocks as cleanly as you would like him to. And he's a big man and he's tall. And so it's harder for him to get out of the blocks and be able to react to that speed off the edge. So he's trying to get every advantage he can. So he jumps the snap count a little bit too soon sometimes. I don't know if he's going to stop doing that. All right. Furthermore, with the holding penalties, I don't know if he's going to stop doing that either. You get beat around the corner, guys trying to give you a rip move, and it's easy to just hook him around the neck and take his ass and put him in a sleeper and put him to sleep. I don't know if he's going to stop doing that either. Bottom line is, Morgan Moses is better than 60 to 70% of the right tackles in this league. That's a fact, okay? Fact that I'm telling you. Yes, he's penalized, but he's also one of the better tackles in the league on the right side of the football. Look, man, I get it. Penalties hurt. And one thing Ron Rivera's teams usually is discipline, and they don't beat themselves. And so I think they're going to emphasize to Morgan Moses, look, bro, you cannot hurt us with the penalties. I think Morgan's going to be fine. I really do. I don't have the same problem that a lot of you have with Morgan Moses, okay? Thank you for the super chat, Derek B. Got another super chat. This one from Hype Dude. Excuse me. Hype Dude, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate it. My man Hype Dude writes, offense, defensive coaching staff, who has more potential? That's a convoluted question because if you're talking about the actual staff itself, I guess you would say the offensive side because we kind of know what we're getting in Jack Del Rio. He's a known commodity. So the upside, he's like a guy with a high ceiling and a high floor is Jack Del Rio. He's the guy you take. I'll give you a great analogy. Jack Del Rio is the Andrew Thomas of our coaching staff. He's the guy that you know is the safest pick at the tackle position. Doesn't have as quite a high upside as some of the other tackles in the draft, but you know you're going to get a guy that comes in day one ready to start, bunch of starts in the SEC. You feel good about what you're getting out of Andrew Thomas. But the floor is high, the ceiling is high, but they're almost one and the same. You're not going to have this guy. He may ultimately be a Pro Bowler, but he's probably not going to be an All-Pro. All right. Now, you know, for us, Scott Turner could end up being Tristan Wirfs, or he could be Mekhi Becton, or he could be Dredrick Wills. All right. Or, you know, and we don't know how any of these guys are going to fare. All those guys could stink, and Andrew Thomas could be an All-Pro and a future Hall of Famer. But all the other guys that I just named have higher upsides, have higher ceilings than that of Andrew Thomas. But also the floor is extremely low for some of those guys as well, especially a Mekhi Becton. And that's the guy that I was going to use as my comp for Scott Turner. The upside is enormous because Becton, he was my number one tackle in the draft because of his size, his sheer length, and just being a mountain of a man and being able to stay in front of all the guys that were put in front of him. And then you throw in being 360, 370, plus the athleticism that he showcased. Ridiculous. Now, that upside is through the roof. But also, there are rumors that this guy can't keep the weight off, and he could easily eat his way out of the league and be 400 pounds after this whole entire situation with the Rona. He could show up for camp at 410. Like, he's got that kind of capability some people feel. So, the floor is really low for him. That's how I feel about Scott Turner. Like, Scott Turner could be an excellent coordinator, just like his dad. And that means his potential is through the roof, and he's going to be a future NFL head coach. Or he could stink as an offensive coordinator, and he could be horrendous, and he could be part of the reason that this offense doesn't take off. We don't know, but I think if you're talking upside, you got to think it's got to be on the offensive side because Jack Del Rio, we know what he's got. Now, if you start taking talent on those sides of the football into consideration, then it's obviously the defensive side because he's got more to work with right out of the gate, does Jack Del Rio. He could turn what was one of the, if not the worst defense in the league and make it 16th in the league, which would be a dramatic improvement. Now you're talking top half of the league in defensive efficiency versus being one of the worst teams in the league. We were dead last in third down efficiency last year. We could not get off the field on third downs. All right, we were like the 31st ranked defense in the league last year. Whatever the case may be, if he takes this defense and we're anywhere north of 20, all right, if we're 19th, if we're 18th, that's a dramatic improvement, guys. I know a lot of you want top 10, top 5. I'm being reasonable and rational, all right, right now. If we are the 16th, if we're the 18th ranked defense, we've dramatically improved, and that's a great sign that things are moving in the right direction. He's got the most talent to work with right now as we sit here, but when it's all said and done, Scott Turner could ultimately be the guy that ends up benefiting the most because we don't know. He's an unknown commodity, and so his ceiling's a little bit higher than that of Jack Del Rio. We know what we're getting from Jack Del Rio. He's got a track record as a head coach and as a defensive coordinator multiple times in this league, and we know what he's bringing to the table. So I would say that it's the offensive staff has the most potential if you're just talking about the staff itself, you start taking into consideration the players that they're coaching, and I think you got to go to the defensive side of the football. Thank you for the super chat, Hype Dude. Got another super chat from Hype Dude. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Hype Dude. Greatly appreciate it. Hype Dude writes, double up. Double L's, keep doing your thing, Lou. Hashtag HTTR. Appreciate you, Hype Dude, man. Greatly appreciate that. Indeed. Got another super chat from Rob U. Thank you for the super chat, Rob U. Greatly appreciate it. Rob writes, what up, Lou? Getting in here late, but gotta bless the channel. Thank you so much for your graciousness, Rob U, for blessing the movement and supporting the channel and the brand. Rob U, appreciate you. Let's see. All right. Got another super chat here. This one from GearCell1. Thank you for the super chat, GearCell1. I think we're going to get a nice little nugget at the end of this, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Let's open this comment up and see what surprise lies in wait for us. GearCell1 writes, heard Dunny was at the cookout that was serving vegan pork and he was wearing jean shorts with dress boots. Tragic. There it is. I knew we were going to get it. And it was a cookout because the guy that gave the eyewitness account said that he was having a cookout at his house. He knew Dunny and DeAndre Baker, grew up with those guys. So he knew them as they grew up together as kids. And he said the reason they didn't rob him or anything is because he grew up with them. He knew them. So it was a cookout. Now, I will tell you this. I don't support your vegan slander because I'm a vegan. So I will not stand for the vegan slander here on the Louie T Network, okay? All right. So you can miss me with the vegan slander. However, wearing jean shorts, first of all, wearing jorts, that's a problem in itself. No grown man should be wearing jorts. All right. Whether they're the cut-off variety or you went out and bought them from the store already pre-cut, jorts are so 90s. I hope you're not doing that. And secondly, with dress boots, that just kills the vibe, okay? Gotta love GearCell1 and his antidotes. Love it. Gotta have more of it. Appreciate you, GearCell1. Greatly appreciate that. Got another super chat. This one from my man Derek B, who is tripling up at this point. Appreciate you, Derek B. Thank you for your contribution tonight. As my man Derek B writes, Gibson will be the fourth running back, sixth wide receiver, fourth tight end, and kick returner. That's assuming that the Panthers are That's assuming the Redskins are keeping 5 receivers to begin with. There have been seasons where the Panthers have just rolled with 4. And knowing that Gibson could double as a wide receiver, he would then make a 5th. So that's another one of those positions. And again, with the expanded rosters on game days and the expanded overall 53-man roster to now 55, and the game day rosters expanded from 45 to 48, you'd like to think that you should be able to keep 5 receivers. And when I look at the depth at receiver, it's going to be hard to cut it down to anything less than 5. All right, it's going to be tough for them to cut it down to 5 in general, let alone saying, we don't need 5 receivers. We'll just go with 4. I just don't see them doing that. So I do think you're right. I do think they're going to keep 5 wide receivers, and Gibson would make the 6th if they decide to use him in that capacity, which they, on certain snaps, will use him in that capacity. I do think you're right. I do think he's going to be the 4th running back, or, honestly, it doesn't matter where you have him in the running back pecking order, 1, 2, 3, or 4. He's going to be one of the 4 running backs, I believe. So I'm with you there on the running back position. Tight end, Chris Cooley was talking about how he's going to be used like more of a wing back. So that's kind of like in a tight end role. I don't necessarily see him being utilized that often in that capacity, but he can do that as well. They could have him in short motion, have him right there lined up, offset as a tight end, then run him across the formation and throw him the football like a tight end. He can do some tight end type things. He's got a 230-pound frame, so he shouldn't be opposed to, putting his body on somebody and then peeling off on a delay and being wide open in the flats and then getting to open up and using that 4.39 speed. So there's some creative things they can do with him. So yes, he could absolutely double as the fourth tight end. I don't think they're going to ask him to block or anything like that, but I get where you're going with that. And obviously he's going to be a guy in the mix for kick returning as well. I think Steven Sims is another guy that they'll want to absolutely take a look at kick returns, because remember, he was the guy that did it for us last year and did it quite effectively, returning one and taking it to the house. So I think he'll be in all of those different capacities, as my man Derek B mentioned. How he will be utilized will be so refreshing and fun to watch as a Redskins fan, because simply put, we haven't had one of these guys. Steven Sims is the closest we've had to one of these guys in forever. After Steven Sims, before him, you got to go all the way back to Brandon Banks. And you were always nervous putting Brandon Banks on the field because he was like 150 pounds soaking wet. But this is the closest thing we've had to a guy that can kind of do multiple things on the football field. We've admired from afar other teams that have had the capability to put a guy on the field, be a jack of all trades, and move around and do creative things with. We haven't had that here in Washington. So this is going to be fun to watch. And Gibson is going to be a guy that I think generates a ton of excitement for Redskins fans in his rookie season and maybe beyond moving forward. Thank you for the super chat, Derek B. Got another super chat. This one from Protect Sports. Greatly appreciate the super chat, Protect Sports. Thank you, Tones, for supporting my man Tones writes. Thanks for pulling up to the stream last night, HTTR. No doubt. I was doing some artwork, so I had the capability to listen. Your notification came up on my feed, so I saw that you were going live, and I said, I'm going to just jump in, support the homie, and check out his work. So no problems doing that, man. And I know a lot of you out there have hit me up, whether it be on IG, in my inbox, or via Twitter, or whatever the case may be, like, hey, I want to get started. Hey, there's only one thing to do it. There's nothing to it. Just jump in and do it. You may not have the best lighting, the best camera, any of that stuff. I didn't have any of that stuff when I started. If this is something that you really want to pursue, everybody's got a cell phone. That's all you need. Turn on the light in a room and put your cell phone on a table, on a stand or something. Hold it in your hand, and just talk ball. That's all we want is the content, and as you grow and as you get more comfortable and you're in a financial situation where you're able to start, at advancing and kind of upgrading the lighting and the cameras and all that, then you do that stuff. But just getting started is the key. So my man Tones is doing some work over there, over on his channel, Protect Sports. Check him out. He's doing some good things, and support him as well. So appreciate you, Protect. No doubt about that. Got another super chat. This one from Jonathan Dunbar. Jonathan Dunbar. I don't know if you're family, man, but your boy Dunny's in some trouble, man. You Dunbars are quite dangerous out there, but I'm playing, man. Hey, Jonathan, thank you for the super chat. Jonathan writes, you have more info on the Dunny situation? And that's it. I mean, pretty much, I've given you all the information that I have. I talked about it at the beginning of the show. I've talked about it periodically throughout the course of the show as people have talked about it via the super chats. But all we really know right now is that Quinton Dunbar was at a cookout last night. A police report was filed at midnight, essentially last night. He was at a cookout yesterday night that started right around 8, 9 o'clock. They were playing cards and gambling and playing video games, and that's supposed to be what the vibe and the mood was like at this particular cookout. just a bunch of guys from the neighborhood and a few guys that maybe you didn't know, but somebody else knew them and invited them, came to this one crib, and they supposed to be kicking it. And they probably got, maybe a dice game or two, maybe some cards. Definitely some cards broke out. Some money was lost. And at some point, DeAndre Baker and Quinton Dunbar decided that they had enough of whatever was going on and decided they was going to rob a few of the dudes there. And for whatever reason, and again, the details in the affidavit pretty much paint the picture that in the days leading up to this cookout, DeAndre Baker and Quinton Dunbar had lost a bunch of money gambling. And so they were probably already in an ornery mood and weren't in a position nor in the mood to lose more money. And so they might have went thinking they was going to get back what they had lost. They ended up losing. Look, if dudes are walking around with $15,000 rollies and some of these watches, you're going to appraise it at a lot higher of a level because it was stolen from you and you want to be compensated. But there was another watch in there that was worth like $17,500. And so you're seeing these big numbers. And obviously these guys are in these circles. When you're an athlete, you're walking around with a bunch of money. You walk around with other guys that have a bunch of money. So they know what expensive watches and pieces of jewelry look like. And so they probably saw these dudes that was beating them for their money and said, man, these dudes got money, man. We about to get their ass. And next thing you know, they put DeAndre Baker. So the affidavit stated that the guy with the eyewitness account says that he didn't see Quinton Dunbar with the gun, but then there's another guy that said Quinton Dunbar did have a gun. At the end of the day, DeAndre Baker definitely had a gun, according to this affidavit. He was the mastermind behind this. Apparently, they showed up in 3 different vehicles, a Lambo, a Beamer, and another vehicle, all high-priced vehicles. They were all parked in a way that suggested that they were going to try to get away. So it kind of seems premeditated that those vehicles were all aligned so that they were easily accessible to get in and get away. So a lot of this points to they were planning on robbing somebody or multiple people at this cookout. I don't know if that's true or not, but again, all of this is in the affidavit. If you're looking for the affidavit, it's on Twitter. You can pull it up on the Miramar Twitter handle. The police department for Miramar, which is the city in Florida in which this crime was committed, posted the link to the affidavit on their Twitter feed, which is where I pulled it from, and I read the entire thing. And so it's pretty damning right now. Quinton Dunbar, DeAndre Baker in a lot of trouble. 4 counts of felony robbery with armed robbery with a weapon, of course, and assault, for these guys. So not looking good at all for these guys. There are eyewitness accounts. So it's not a good situation, not a good look for either one of those guys that are involved. Thank you for the super chat, Jonathan Dunbar. Got another super chat. This one from Santiago Tradell. Thank you for the super chat, Santiago Tradell. Greatly appreciate it. Santiago writes, just getting in, had to holler at you. Stay blessed. Likewise, bro. You make sure you steer clear of that COVID. You already told me all of the different things you've got going on, so you definitely need to stay clear of any of the nonsense and chicanery that's going on out on the streets. So definitely stay blessed as well. Thank you for the super chat, Santiago Tradell. Got another super chat. This one from my man Protect Sports. Once again, double up, as my man Tones doubling up with the super chat. And he writes, Dunny and Bake were foolish, shaking my effing head. Damn, bruh. I know. I mean, this is crazy. And again, your high profile NFL athletes. One guy is a former first round pick. Was a first round pick in last year's draft. The other guy just got traded to a team and is looking for a brand new deal. How stupid could you be? This could not be any more ill-timed for a guy like Quinton Dunbar. For a guy like DeAndre Baker, he's probably going to make more money in his rookie deal than Quinton Dunbar has made in his entire career to this point. And for Dunbar, you're looking to get your hands on new money, and you do something like this, you get yourself dragged into something like this. I'm so disappointed in Quinton Dunbar. I don't know him personally, but I'm just disappointed because from all accounts, listening to people and then listening to Dunny and getting to know him as he was on this football team and listening to him talk, he sounded like a stand-up dude, man. He sounded like a young guy with his head on his shoulders, screwed on tight. And this sounded like something that he wouldn't get himself involved in. But again, you never know these guys. You don't know these guys, and you never really know. And a lot of times these guys are coming up from the streets, man. They coming up from the hood. Like, they coming up from the dirt, from the bottom. All right, they seen it all, done it all. And a lot of these guys are lucky to even escape. And athletics is usually their vehicle that drives them out of the hood and out of the life of being a doughboy and being out on the corners and being in the game. So to go home and put yourself back in that whole mindset of this is what I got to do to make money. It reminds me, you guys all remember Hurd, the ex-Dallas Cowboys receiver that was like this big drug dealer. Like, he hadn't made a bunch of money, but the money that he was making, he took it and bought a bunch of drugs and he was flipping it. And I'm like, really, dude? Like, what do you... I mean, some of these players, they can't help themselves, man. And so it's unfortunate. But anyhow. Got another super chat. This one from Santiago Trudell. Double up. For my man, Santiago Trudell. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciated. Santiago writes, Dunny definitely forgot social distancing. Well, in Florida, there is really no social distancing necessary. They've opened back up the state. And look, to be honest with you, Florida marches to their own drum, the beat of their own drum. They were never practicing social distancing in Florida. I mean, there were shots of people on beaches in Jacksonville and places when this thing was at its height, when everyone was in mass hysteria and they were telling us to stay in our damn houses. People were in drones going out to the beaches in Florida. So Florida is a different animal all to itself. And so they had already opened up Florida. So whatever happens in Florida stays in Florida. It's one of those types of places. Obviously, this didn't quite meet that criteria, but we'll see what happens. Like I said, we don't know the whole story. I hate to jump to conclusions, but, I'm just going off of the affidavit, and a lot of times with stories like this, there's two sides to every story. There may be more to this, but it doesn't sound good. And like I gave you a scenario of how these guys could have robbed them, or they could have heard through the streets, like they could have gotten robbed 2 weeks ago, and they could have heard through the streets that those are the guys that did it. Like you don't know what the situation is. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm just going off of what the affidavit said. It doesn't sound good for either one of those guys. Anyhow. So that's the final super chat for now. It's going to give me an opportunity to get into the tight end position before we get to the next portion of our show tonight. So the tight end position has been a topic of discussion for so many of us with this football team. We thought the Redskins were going to be more aggressive in addressing the tight end position in this draft, but I really appreciate the fact that they didn't reach. I think there were some tight ends, and if you listen to Kyle Smith after the draft was over, he admitted there were some tight ends that they were impressed with and that they were infatuated with, and had those guys been on the board at the time of some picks that made the best sense for those guys, where they valued them, they would have pulled the trigger. But those guys were gone, and I think those three tight ends, in no particular order, and I'm just guessing, I can't confirm nor deny this, because a lot of these tight ends were on the board and they just passed on them. So that tells you how they felt about those tight ends. This was not a deep tight end draft class to begin with. So I think the number was 3 that he said. And I think those 3 tight ends were Adam Troutman, Harrison Bryant, and Cole Kmet. I think those are the 3 tight ends. Or, you know what? It may not have been Harrison Bryant. It may have been Devin Asiasi. I think it might have been Devin Asiasi, Cole Kmet. I'm guessing. I'm speculating. I don't know this. I can't confirm nor deny this. But I think it was Cole Kmet, Devin Asiasi, and Adam Troutman. And remember, they didn't have a second round pick. And by the time they were on the clock in the third round, all of those guys were gone with the exception of Troutman. Troutman was there to be selected, but maybe they didn't value him in the third round. But maybe had he been there in the fourth round, they may have taken him. Who's to say? I know the Saints. Well, no, I think the Saints traded back up into the back end of the second round and took Troutman, right in front of where the Redskins would have had a shot to take him. So I don't know. That's nor here nor there. At the end of the day, they didn't take a tight end, and so it left us all wondering, what the hell are they doing? And they did get Thaddeus Moss, and they made it a priority. And if you listen to Thaddeus Moss talk, he said, look, I signed with the Redskins because they were the first team to approach me. So Thaddeus Moss said that 3 teams called after the draft was over. The Redskins were the first. That's why he signed with the Redskins. And the Patriots and the Bengals all called. So he signed with the Redskins because they were the first ones to reach out. And thus, it gave us hope for the tight end position for the upcoming season. But we still don't really know what the Redskins have. And so I thought it was a good idea to deep dive into the tight end position to give you guys a little bit more clear picture of what the Redskins have and to really see if there's something here worth being excited about. So before we do that, Thaddeus Moss is part of the reason that I decided to start with the tight end position is because I was able to listen to him talk to the media this past week, a couple of days ago, as a matter of fact. And he talked about the process of being snubbed, how he felt like he should have been drafted and he wasn't. And he talked about how he felt disrespected. He also talked about being Randy Moss's son and what that's been like his entire life. He talked about his mindset coming into the Redskins locker room, and he talked about a number of things, but I want to give you the soundbite that I think gets me excited about this guy because I love guys that have a chip on their shoulder. And he probably is going to come with a chip on his shoulder anyway because he's Randy Moss's son and everybody's expecting him to ball out. But he's had that chip his entire life. He's had to deal with, oh, you're Randy Moss's son. But to take it a step further, he didn't get drafted. And let me make an amendment to something I said earlier because I was wrong about something and you guys reminded me and I never came back and corrected myself. So let me do that right now. I talked about Thaddeus Moss not running at the combine. I'm not walking back from my statement that he's not fast because he's not. I can see that on tape. But I made it a point of emphasis to say that he was hiding something. That's why he didn't run. He didn't run at the combine because he was hiding us from his lack of speed. That's not true. He was injured. That's why he didn't run. They found a fracture, a Jones fracture in his foot at the combine, which is why he wasn't able to participate. That's the reason he did not get drafted. Had he had a normal offseason where teams were able to check him out medically, he probably would have been drafted. But because of the unique set of circumstances that surrounded this year's draft, a lot of guys got hurt by not being able to meet with teams and their medical staff to check them out medically. And you saw a lot of guys drop in the draft or not get drafted at all because of the lack of information. He was one of those guys hurt by the lack of information and not being able to meet with these teams and be checked out medically. And so I made an error there and I needed to correct that. He didn't participate at the combine because of hiding his lack of speed. He was injured, and that's also the reason he didn't get drafted. But I want to play a soundbite from Thaddeus Moss's interview with the media this past week, where he spoke to the media members of the Redskins. And here's something that I found interesting that he had to say in talking about his name and how he felt slighted by not being drafted. Take a listen.
I mean, well, first, I mean, it's a blessing to be here, and I thank God and the Redskins for this opportunity. Ultimately, all I could ask for was opportunity. But, it was definitely a slap in the face. I put a lot of work in, years of football, and, we went undefeated and won a national championship. I played my best ball in our biggest games. So I definitely felt like it was a slap in the face. Not getting drafted, having pick kickers and punters and, special teams. Just special team guys get picked over me. I definitely felt some type of way over it. But it's no difference. I've always had to prove myself my whole life. Having the last name that I've had, I've always had to prove everybody wrong, or just prove myself right my whole life, and this is no difference.
So that was Thaddeus Moss, and I felt like you got a lot of the emotions that he felt watching day 1, day 2, and then finally day 3 of the draft come and go and not hear his name called. And so I love that chip that he has on his shoulder. I love the fact that he feels slighted. He's got something to prove. And I think you're going to see a guy that comes out and balls out for this Redskins football team. I like Thaddeus Moss a lot. Is he a true difference maker? We're going to find out. I don't think so right now. But I could be wrong about that. And you know what? He could get in the best shape of his life, because he looked like a pretty heavy guy, 250 or so when he was at LSU. He can get in the best shape of his life, come back to the camp, whenever that is, at 243 and be a lot faster. Dwayne Haskins did it. Dwayne Haskins ran a 540. He ran like a 40. He was slow as hell at the combine. And I told you on tape, I didn't really see a guy that was uber athletic, and we all expected him to be a sitting duck in a pocket. And then he went and he reshaped his body after the draft. Came back a different dude. Even talked to John Keim about how he absolutely changed his body and dropped a bunch of body fat and came back a better athlete. And we saw the end result. Dwayne Haskins was very mobile in the pocket last year, and outside of the pocket, he impressed all of us in the preseason. And we said, whoa, we didn't expect that kind of mobility from Dwayne Haskins. We can see the same thing from a guy like Thaddeus Moss. But at the end of the day, he wasn't selected, and that may be to the benefit of the Washington Redskins. I've got some super chats, and then we're going to get into to the tight ends one by one, and we'll talk about what the Redskins potentially have at the tight end position. Lord have mercy. We got a super chat from Quinton Dunbar. So someone created an account to pose as Quinton Dunbar. Oh man, you guys, I cannot with you guys. Thank you for the super chat, Quinton Dunbar, but you should be saving your money at this point. You don't have any money to be super chatting me and putting yourself out there. Don't look, if you don't know the first rule about anything in terms of getting in trouble, keep your mouth shut. All right, get yourself an attorney and shut up. So Quinton Dunbar writes, I was home with my girl that night, bro. That's not going to cut it. You got eyewitnesses that ID you and another assailant, DeAndre Baker, at the scene. So at home with my girl, not going to fly tonight. No, I'm sorry. That's not going to fly this time. So good try, though. Good try. Got another super chat. This one is from Gearcell 1. Double up. Thank you for the super chat and doubling up, Gearcell 1. Thank you. And Gearcell 1 writes, your thoughts on the Colvin signing. Tell Dunbar, please don't wear his corduroy Seahawks wife beater anymore. Please. Don't wear corduroys. You can start a fire. The Aaron Colvin signing. So let's talk about that, because I found it interesting that the Redskins brought him back. I shouldn't be surprised. This has been the MO of the Redskins this offseason, signing any and everyone under the sun that they feel like can come in and compete at a position of need. So corner, definitely a position of need. Aaron Colvin is a guy that the Redskins signed during the season last year. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was excited when the Redskins signed him. It was like week number 9 or so when the Redskins signed him, and I was ecstatic. I thought he was going to come in, and it was going to take him a little while to acclimate himself, but I was thinking we were going to get the Aaron Colvin from Jacksonville. And remember, He was one of the premier nickel corners in this league when he was in Jacksonville. And then he got some good money, and I forgot where he ended up going. I want to say it was Houston. He got some great money to sign with the Houston Texans, and for whatever reason, it did not work in Houston, and they ended up cutting him a year into the deal. And so I figured, okay, Aaron Colvin, man, this could be a really big signing for us because this guy can play ball. And we just never really got to see Aaron Colvin for whatever reason last year. And he did not make a difference when he was on the field last year. And so I was really disappointed that he didn't make the impact that I thought he had a chance to make. Now you fast forward, he was a free agent. I didn't think he was going to be back because the lack of noise that he made last year when he was on the roster. Lo and behold, quietly on a Wednesday when nobody's paying attention, the Redskins signed, it might have actually been today, the Redskins signed Aaron Colvin, and he's back in the mix. I'm excited because, like I said, he's still a relatively young guy. I think there's still good football left in him. He didn't just forget how to play the nickel. I think there's something here, and we don't have a nickel currently. If you believe that they paid Kendall Fuller to be a boundary corner, we don't actually have a nickel. Now, I think Kendall Fuller's best work is done in the nickel, in the slot. And I think ultimately, when the Redskins put their best three corners on the field, I think that unit is going to look like this. Thad Moreau on one side is a boundary corner. Ronald Darby on the other side is a boundary corner. And Kendall Fuller in the slot as your nickel. I could be wrong. And maybe the best unit is Thad Moreau / Ronald Darby, Kendall Fuller on the other boundary, and Aaron Colvin in the nickel. Or maybe it's Jimmy Moreland. I think Jimmy Moreland in the slot was a failed experiment last year. And, everyone just jumps to conclusions. Oh, he's a smaller guy. Just stick him in the slot. He'll be fine. Not everybody is built for the slot. It takes a very special individual to play inside. I don't know if Jimmy's built for that or not. We'll see. But Jimmy may be more of a boundary guy and has to stay outside to be comfortable. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the cornerback position as a whole. But I like the signing of Aaron Colvin, and I want to throw him in the mix and see what he's got, because I don't think last year was a true representation of what he has left as a cornerback in this league. So thank you for the super chat. Thank you for doubling up. Gear Sell 1. Got another super chat. This one from Dexter Williams. Greatly appreciated, Dexter. Thank you for the super chat. Dexter writes, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good do you think our defense would fare this season if there is one? On a scale of 1 to 10, right now, I'm a little bullish on the defense because of the addition of both Jack Del Rio and Chase Young. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to put it at an 8 right now. I'm leaning towards 7, but I'm going to go on the high side and go 8 because of the confidence that Del Rio has instilled in me and his track record that precedes him. And then I know what we're getting in Chase Young. I know some of you are like, how can you say that? He's not played a snap in the NFL. You know it when you see it. Chase Young is the real deal. And I expect him to come in and just wreak absolute havoc on the NFC East and the NFL in general. And I just want to see how long it's going to take teams to start doubling him. I don't think right out of the gate they're going to give him that respect. And I think he's going to have to take it. And all it's going to take is 1 2.5 or 1 3-sack game for everyone to say, okay, he's the real deal. That could be week 1 against Philadelphia for all we know. All right. He could go in. They could start Andre Dillard, and he could bless him right out of the gate. And right off the bat, everyone else in the league is taking notice and saying, all right, he's not going to do that to us. And he could be getting double teamed the rest of the season. But honestly speaking, I'm going with an 8. Now, I don't think it could be any lower than a 7 with Jack Del Rio if we're healthy. If we're relatively healthy, I don't think it's any lower than a 7. And if it's anywhere near lower than a 7, it's going to be because of the secondary. That will be our demise. If we don't hit home, if we don't get pressure, the secondary could be our undoing. But I think we're going to get consistent pressure. I like the group that we're going to put together up front. And I think we're going to be able, and I think the athleticism that we're going to be able to put on the field at linebacker for the first time in a long time is also going to help this defense improve dramatically and take some leaps and bounds in their upward mobility in terms of their defensive rankings in 2020. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say it's an 8, no lower than a 7. Thank you for the super chat, Dexter Williams. Got another super chat. This one is from Colton Wheeler. Thank you for the super chat, Colton Wheeler. Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for your generosity, Colton Wheeler. Colton writes, I just want to see Haskins ball out. Love the shows. Keep up the good work. Hashtag HTTR. I think most Redskins fans want to see that. There is this small conglomerate, this small sector of the fan base that wants to see Dwayne fail so that they can point and say, I told you so, that he stinks and we should have took Tua and this, that, and the third. There is a small portion of the base. Very, very small. It's not a huge part. I think most fans want to see Dwayne succeed because if he succeeds, more likely than not, the team overall is going to succeed. And I'll take it a step further. If he's successful, that means the Redskins can then move forward with their plans of building this team. If he is not successful, if they have question marks and doubts about him, now you put yourself back into that pool of teams looking for a quarterback, and that's a place you don't want to be because with the way that we think this defense is going to perform, and again, we could be wrong because we thought the defense was going to be good last year. We thought the defense was going to be good the year before that, but it's a set of different circumstances with Jack Del Rio here and Chase Young and some of the talent that we have now. It's just different. But the defense isn't going to allow us to go 3-13. The defense isn't going to allow us to be in a position to draft a Trevor Lawrence or the quarterback for Ohio State. Like, you're not going to be in a position because we're not going to be we're not going to be 3-13, 4-12. Like I said, the floor for this team is 6-10. That's how I feel. So that's not going to put you in a position to draft one of the elite quarterbacks. And so you could find yourself either having to mortgage your future by trading a bunch of draft picks to move up, or you find yourself not being in a position to get one of those guys, and then now you're in trouble. Now you may be having to kind of circle around the free agency pool. And newsflash, last year was an anomaly. You generally don't get that many potential starting quarterbacks on the market at once. That generally doesn't happen. So we'll see what happens, but I assure you of this. The vast majority, I'd say 95% of this fan base wants to see Haskins ball out. You and me and just about everybody else here included. So let's hope that takes place this upcoming season. Thank you once again for the super chat, Colton Wheeler. Cal L with a super chat. Thank you for the super chat, Cal L. Greatly appreciated. Cal L writes, great show, Louie. Thoughts on Caleb Wilson? So I got him. You see him on the screen with the tight ends. Let's talk about the tight end position. Let's see if we got any more super chats before I get into that. Thank you for that super chat, KLL, because you're setting me up for what I want to talk about. Dexter Williams, double up, thank you for doubling up, Dexter Williams. Greatly appreciate you, Dexter Williams. Dexter writes, double up for my man LT, hashtag HTTR. Thank you, Dexter Williams, for doubling up on the super chat. Thank you for your contribution. But to go back to my man Cal L's super chat, let's get into the tight end position and talk about each and every one of these guys. And if you want to send your super chats, send them in, and we'll get to those after I'm done breaking down these tight ends. So I was really fascinated to look at the position and find that there were some guys at the tight end position that we have that I didn't know were on the roster. One is Caleb Wilson that Cal L brought up. I didn't know he was on the team. I was a Caleb Wilson guy, last year. Caleb Wilson was a draft pick in 2019. He was a draft pick in the 2019 draft, 7th round pick of the Arizona Cardinals, I believe. Did not make their roster, and the Redskins ended up picking him up at some point, whether it be this offseason or during the season, and we just didn't know about it. And he was stashed away on the practice squad. whatever the case may be. That was a guy that I really liked out of UCLA. I liked him out of UCLA. And he wasn't much of a blocker, but he was a supremely gifted athlete, and he had really good hands. Wasn't the best route runner, but you saw the potential for this guy to be a problem at the next level with his pass-catching prowess. Keep in mind, Caleb Wilson ran a 4.58 at the combine last year. So this was a guy that I thought had some upside, and I'm shocked to see him actually on this Redskins roster. So that's a guy that I'm excited about just because he's a pass catcher. You guys wanted Hunter Bryant as a pass catcher. Caleb Wilson is every bit the pass catcher that Hunter Bryant was, and he's faster. Hunter Bryant ran a 4.6, like a 4.66, 4.64, something like that at the combine. Caleb Wilson ran a 4.58. So you're talking about a better athlete than that of Hunter Bryant and Caleb Wilson. So I'm excited about Caleb Wilson. You know, I'm excited about his upside. The question is, can he be better in the blocking department? That remains to be seen, but he's definitely a guy that I'm excited about. Didn't even know he was on the roster. You keep going and you look at the guy behind him in Logan Thomas. Yes, I finally remembered his damn name. Logan Thomas is a guy that the Redskins staff, Kyle Smith in particular, really excited about Logan Thomas. I am, however, not as excited about him. I do understand that there is some upside. This is a guy that has not been playing the tight end position for a very long time. And I know some people keep bringing up, well, he was a tight end before in college and quarterback, but he was primarily a quarterback. He wanted to play quarterback. He got drafted as a quarterback. He spent his first couple of years in the league in Arizona under Bruce Arians as a quarterback. That failed, and it failed miserably. He went back to being a tight end, but he still hasn't done it at a high enough level for us to feel confident that he's going to do it at a high level at the NFL game. However, you're seeing bits and pieces of him starting to put things together. He's a big guy, man. He's 6'6", right around 250, 55 pounds. He's a big dude. And so you couple the size with the athleticism that he has, and there's some things that the Redskins think they can tap into with Logan Thomas. I want to see it. I'm from Missouri. You got to show me. And so I don't believe it until I see it with him. But Kyle Smith is definitely excited about Logan Thomas. That is for certain. So then you move on to a couple of guys that were here last year. And I think, to me, they're the leaders in the clubhouse to make the roster. You start with the incumbent starter from a year ago, and that's Jeremy Sprinkle. Sprinkle me, bitch. Sprinkle me. And Jeremy Sprinkle, to me, is a guy that I loved. Let me say this. I loved Jeremy Sprinkle's game coming out of Arkansas. I thought this guy had tight end number one type of capabilities written all over him. And I said, at worst, this guy's going to be a dynamic tight end number two. All right. I thought he had the capability to be like a Demetrius Harris. If you guys recall, Demetrius Harris was in Kansas City with the Chiefs. He was like their third tight end. But he was a beast athletically, did some really good things for them, got a deal to go to the Cleveland Browns. I don't know how things are really working out for him there, but I just know the guy was athletically gifted, and I saw some of the same characteristics and traits with Jeremy Sprinkle, and I actually thought he was a quality blocker at Arkansas as well, so I felt really good about Jeremy Sprinkle. And for whatever reason, he's been inconsistent with his hands here. He'll make a ridiculous catch, and then he'll drop an easy one on third down. And so that's been an issue. His blocking hasn't been all that great. And I really don't know what to expect week to week from Jeremy Sprinkle. Am I getting good Jeremy? Am I going to get lackadaisical Jeremy? I really don't know. But the talent is still there. I don't know if we've seen the best of Jeremy Sprinkle or if he can take it to another level. If he can't take it to another level, then he's no better than a second, worst case scenario, third tight end. He's an NFL tight end for sure, but he's no better than a second, worst case, third tight end on an NFL roster if he can't take it to another level. He had a chance to start last year. This is his final opportunity to prove that he belongs here in Washington. If it doesn't go well for him in 2020, he'll be dismissed, I believe, after this season or before it. We'll see what happens. Jeremy Sprinkle, though, is a guy with a legitimate shot to make this football team. Same can be said for Hale Henches. Here's a guy that came on last season, and did some really good things. I was impressed. I told you guys as much. Remember, I made a joke when Bill Callahan talked about all the young, talented players on the offensive side of the football. He named Terry McLaurin and Steven Sims and Darius Geis, and then he threw in Hale Hinches. And I said, what in the hell are you talking about, Bill? Like, this guy doesn't belong in that category. And then Hale Hinches showed me some things late in the season. Caught the touchdown pass versus the Giants. Had himself a good ball game in that game. And played well down the stretch versus the Eagles and the Cowboys. And so I said, I don't know about you, but Hale Hinches impressed the hell out of me down the stretch. And he can block a little bit. He can catch the football. He's not a tremendous athlete, but he's athletically gifted enough. He moves well enough that he's no better than a second tight end. But I think he could actually be a credible second tight end. I can tell you this much. He will be one hell of a third tight end. That is for sure. Okay, so I'm convinced at worst, Hale Hinches is a number 3 tight end on this football team this upcoming season. I like Hale Hinches, and I think there's a place on this roster for him. And I think he's got a legitimate shot of making this football team. Now, you get to all the guys that are coming in, the other guys that are coming in to this team. You start with the guys that the Redskins signed this offseason. They signed Richard Rodgers, the ex-Green Bay Packers draftee out of California. He then moved on and has been in multiple spots in the NFL. Last place that he was in was Philadelphia. This is a guy that had some flashes early in his career in Green Bay, but really hasn't lived up to the billing. I'm not impressed by Richard Rodgers. Never have really been a Richard Rodgers guy, so I'm not expecting a ton out of him. He's solid in the run game. He's solid as a pass catcher, but he doesn't stand out in any facet of his game. So I'm not big on Richard Rodgers. It wouldn't shock me if he made this team. They signed him for a reason to come in and compete. But if you're talking upside, just about every guy on that artwork, every guy on that thumbnail has a higher upside than Richard Rodgers, maybe with the exception of Marcus Ball. Speaking of Marcus Ball, that's the guy you see next to him in a Panthers jersey. Do not discount Marcus Ball, okay? Here's why I say this. He was a guy that was a late bloomer at Ohio State, couldn't really get on the field until his final year at Ohio State. Really the last 2 years at Ohio State, he started to make a name for himself. But he was the full-time starter his final year. Did some good things those last 2 years, put up some decent numbers. Nothing to really write home about, but you start to see some flashes from him. He ends up in the league on multiple teams. Last year and the year before, he was with the Panthers. So this man has not only 1 year, but yet 2 years of experience with Ron Rivera. He was also in the offense last year with Scott Turner. So do not discount in a shortened offseason what that could mean for a guy like Marcus Ball. Quietly, shh. They signed Marcus Ball when no one was paying attention before free agency even started. So that tells you they have a level of comfort with Marcus Ball. All right. They did not sign him just to sign him. They signed him not to teach the other guys. This isn't a backup quarterback that's going to have an impact in the quarterback room. This isn't a guy they're signing to have an impact in the tight end room that can help teach the scheme. This is the guy that they look at and say, he's good enough to make this football team, and he knows our system. So do not discount Marcus Ball. I don't think he's going to beat out all of these other guys, but then again, these other guys have not proven themselves. Thus, don't count out Marcus Ball, okay? There are 3 spots available at tight end for this team potentially. Maybe 4. I'm going to go off the track record that Ron Rivera has in Carolina and say that he's going to continue to keep 3 tight ends. There are 3 spots. None of them are spoken for at this point. I'd like to think that Jeremy Sprinkle and or Hale Hinches will have at least one of those spots, possibly two. Okay? But don't discount a guy like Marcus Ball being one of those 3 tight ends. I would not do that if I were you. And finally, of course, there's the guy that we started this conversation with, Thaddeus Moss. Unlike the rest of these guys on this team, he wasn't drafted into the league, or he wasn't signed by the Redskins as a free agent before the draft. He was signed after the draft. All the rest of these guys were on this football team prior to the draft taking place. So he's the latest to add to the roster. He's the newest comer. Now, with that being said, to me, he has the greatest opportunity to put a stranglehold on the starting position. Now, you got to make the football team first. If he's healthy, I think talent-wise, he's probably better than every one of these guys because of the combination of being able to catch. First of all, he's got the best set of hands of any of the tight ends on the roster right now, as constructed. Best set of hands, not close. Okay, that's a given. Athletically, he is not the best, and you probably could look at 3, 4, maybe even 5 guys that are athletically more gifted than Thaddeus Moss. And also, size-wise, he's probably the in the doghouse there as well. I think he's the shortest of all the guys, and probably has one of the shorter wingspans. So in that department, not really great there either. But what he lacks in size, what he lacks in sheer athleticism, he makes up with toughness in the run game as a blocker and his ability to run routes and catch the football. He's a clean route runner. He doesn't get a ton of separation, but he knows how to sit down in zone coverage, make himself available, and he knows how to catch the football in traffic. And so there's no doubt in my mind, if he's healthy, he's making this football team. All right. So when I look at this group of tight ends, I'm fascinated by a few names. I'm fascinated by Caleb Wilson, as should you. I told you he ran a 4.58, and he was a guy that did some really good things at UCLA. He's really talented as Caleb Wilson, all right? He's got some talent, man. And so Caleb Wilson is a guy I'm intrigued by. I'm intrigued by Logan Thomas. Obviously, Kyle Smith and company are intrigued by him as well. I'm intrigued by Thaddeus Moss. And to a certain degree, I'm intrigued by Marcus Ball. I think I know who Hale Hinches is, and I'm comfortable with him being one of 3 tight ends on this roster. Same thing could be said for Jeremy Sprinkle. I know who he is to this point, and I'm pretty comfortable with him being one of 3 tight ends on this roster. The one guy that I'm really not that interested in, seen enough of him, know who he is at this point of his career, know that there's really no upside, is Richard Rodgers. So outside of, Richard Rodgers, you're talking about 6 guys that I'm excited to see compete for 3 spots. Now, how is this going to go? I don't know. But I'm excited about Caleb Wilson. I'm excited about Thaddeus Moss. And I'm intrigued, all right, not as excited, but more so intrigued by Logan Thomas. Because I've seen him, but he's still raw because he's still making that transition. But he's got something that most of the other guys, outside of maybe Sprinkle, have, and that's size. He's a big kid at 6'6", 250, 255. He's a big dude, is Logan Thomas. So outside of Sprinkle, who is also in that 6'6" neighborhood, the rest of these guys are 6'4", 6'3", somewhere in that neighborhood. You might get one more 6'5" guy in there, but for the most part, you're not talking about guys that are huge in size. But I'm intrigued by this group. I don't think it's as bad as you guys want to portray it out to be, and as bad as we've made it out to be. I'm guilty as charged as well. I can't separate myself from you guys. I've thought that we needed to upgrade, and I thought we needed to, and I still think we can upgrade the tight end position. Don't get me wrong. But this wasn't the draft to not have a second-round pick and want to upgrade the tight end position. And thus, we found ourselves in a position where the best tight ends weren't available, and they decided to go in a different direction, and I was okay with that. And now having a chance to take a hard, long look at the roster at the tight end position, I'm intrigued by a number of guys and what they could potentially bring to this offense in 2020. So with that being said, let's get to the comment section. And I thought I saw some more super chats. Let's see if I was right. Yes, I did see a couple more super chats. We'll get to those. Leo Suarez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate it. I'm not sure if you had already super chatted tonight. I don't think you have, but I'll keep that one in mind. Either way, Leo Suarez, thank you for the super chat. Leo writes, Haskins is determined to be great. I'll give him that. Absolutely. And that's the first step, is you got to believe in yourself. And I don't think he's short on confidence. I think he believes he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And I feel confident that he has that capability of to be able to do that. And if the Redskins surround him with talent and they protect him and give him every opportunity to prove that he is that guy, I think he's going to be able to do some special things in this league. And I feel really confident about that as well. Got another super chat from King of the North. Appreciate the super chat, King of the North. Greatly appreciate it. My man King of the North writes, Colvin has been in the league 6 years and has 0 picks. No thanks. I love Moss's attitude. I think he will be productive for us. Colvin, it's not always about picks, all right, in this league. Yes, I love turnovers just as much as the next man. But at the end of the day, if you can tell me that you got sticky coverage on 3rd and 8 and you're able to knock the football away, or you're able to rake at the guy's arm as he's trying to bring the ball in and it's incomplete and they got a punt, I'll take that as just as much as I would an interception. All right. Hey, we all love picks, and those are great. And it's sudden change of possession, and it usually means you're going to get better field position. But picks aren't everything. You know, just like with edge rusher, speed isn't everything. You know, just get me off the field on 3rd down. If you can tell me that you can do that, and he was very adept at doing that in Jacksonville. Again, he was one of the best nickels when he was a free agent. After his, I think it was his 4th season in Jacksonville, after his rookie deal had expired, he was one of the most sought after nickels and got a nice payday by the Texans. And for whatever reason, it did not work out in Houston, and he finds himself in Washington. So we'll see what happens. And to speak to your point, I love Moss's attitude. I played you that soundbite of him talking about how he was passed over and disrespected, and how he saw punters and kickers and special teams guys being selected, and he felt like it was a slap in the face. That's the kind of chip I want on his shoulder. I want him to remember that. It's the same thing that drove Tom Brady to be one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen. The Brady Six. We all know it. You know, I watched that Brady Six special not too long ago, and this man was crying. He was reduced to tears in talking about how he was passed over and how that fueled him and motivated him. And he can remember every single one of those guys that was taken ahead of him in that draft, you know? And that chip, Brady still has that to this day, all right? He carries that burden around with him. And I think Thaddeus Moss is going to do the exact same thing with not being drafted, you know? There's a level of embarrassment that comes with that. The fact that you're Randy Moss's son and you didn't get drafted, what? There's a level of disappointment that you weren't drafted because of the foot injury. He knows he would have been drafted if not for the foot injury. But then there's a level of anger because he feels like, I put together the best season of my collegiate career. I helped my team perform in some of the best games, our biggest games of the season. He mentioned that. Biggest games of the season. I played my best brand of ball. I helped us win a national championship and go undefeated in what was arguably the toughest schedule in college football history of any undefeated team. And you're telling me I wasn't good enough to be selected even with an injury? Come on, man. So now he's angry. I love it. He's going to put all those things together, put that chip on his shoulder, and I'm hoping that's going to make for a guy that performs at a very high level for the Redskins for many years to come. Got another super chat. This one from King of the North. Once again, double up, Thank you for the super chat, King of the North. Greatly appreciate that. Thank you for doubling up. My man, King of the North, writes, I read an article that said Cornelius Lucas has a shot to compete for starting right tackle. He played right tackle last year and had better PFF grades than Morgan Moses. Thoughts? Look, everybody is up for debate. Every position is up for grabs, okay? Just about every position is available, all right? I think that Ron Rivera has made that pretty clear, that nobody's safe, all right? I don't know of any position right now outside of Chase Young, Montez Sweat, and the Alabama Wall, and Matt Ioannidis. I consider him a starter, even if he's not starting. Outside of those 5 players, and Landon Collins at safety, all right, I don't think anybody else is really guaranteed anything at this point. And Brandon Sheriff, I would go ahead and say Brandon Sheriff at right guard. Outside of those 6 players, and you know, I feel comfortable saying that with Dwayne, but I think Dwayne still has to earn it. So those 6 guys that I just named, on the defensive side of the football, Landon Collins at safety, the entire defensive line. So that's 5, so 7 guys, because I'm adding Ioannidis in there, along with Young, Sweat, Payne, and Allen, and Ioannidis. Those 5 guys are guaranteed. You know, starting spots, roster spots, whatever you want to call it. And then on the offensive side, it's just Sheriff for me. You know, Rouye could end up playing left guard for all we know, and they could end up sliding Keith Ishmael in at center, and that could be part of their best 5. Like, we don't know where everyone's locked into, but Morgan Moses isn't guaranteed anything. They don't know Morgan Moses. They just know Morgan Moses had some issues with penalties last year, and he's been good for the Redskins. Not great. And if you're not great, then that means you can be replaced. So I told you that I don't expect anybody to start at right tackle but Morgan Moses. And I'm going to stick steadfast to that. Cornelius Lucas was good for the Bears and the Lions when he was pressed into duty. However, I don't think he's better than Morgan Moses. Now, time may tell and prove out to be the opposite, that he is, in fact, better than Morgan Moses. However, we'll see. You know, time will tell. I think they're going to give guys opportunities to compete, but when it's all said and done, I don't think the right side of the offensive line is going to change. I think it's going to remain intact. Morgan Moses is going to be your right tackle. I think Brandon Sheriff is going to be your right guard. I think Chase Rouye is going to be your center. But again, it's all about putting your best 5 on the field. And Chase Rouye at guard may actually better suit this team if you're trying to put your best 5 on the field. So again, there could be some shakeups coming. You know, Morgan Moses could be a part of those shakeups. I highly doubt that, though. I feel like it's going to be Moses, Sheriff, Chase Rouye, Wes Martin, and then the question mark really becomes who's your starting left tackle. But to your point, I think that they're going to give just about everybody on the roster a chance to compete. And as you've seen, they didn't bring in Cornelius Lucas to be eye candy. They didn't bring him in as just a token guy to bring in here. They felt like the Redskins needed more depth on the offensive line. And if he's better than the guy currently starting, he may turn out to be more than just depth. He may turn out to be a starter. I don't think that's going to be the case, but as you mentioned, it's possible. It's definitely possible. Thank you for the super chat and doubling up, King of the North, King in the North. See if we got any more super chats. We do have one more super chat. It is from Nickel25. Thank you for the super chat, Nickel25. Greatly appreciated. He writes, 3, as in 3 tight ends. Marcus Ball, Caleb Wilson, Thaddeus Moss. Hashtag HTTR. Again, that's a group that intrigues me right there because there's the unknown. You got to go all the way back to Ohio State tape back in like 2018 or 2016, 2017 to get some Marcus Ball tape. All right. So you got to go back a ways to check him out. As far as Caleb Wilson is concerned, I'm very, very fond of his game. He was a guy that I studied very intently last season because I thought last season, and this is where the Redskins, I thought, dropped the ball. I thought last season the Redskins should have drafted a tight end. Now, we couldn't have foreseen Jordan Reed, and maybe they should have because this wasn't his first concussion, and he had been dealing with injuries. And Vernon Davis was already pushing 97 years old. So the writing was on the wall. I thought the Redskins, in what was one of the deepest tight end draft classes in recent memory in 2019, I thought they should have taken a tight end. You guys remember me saying that repeatedly last year. They failed to do so, and it put us in a position where now all of a sudden we looked up, there was no depth, there was no talent, and we were kind of cupboard left bare at the tight end position. Now you look up, and there's a lot of young guys, but you're not quite sure what they're going to bring to the table. Thaddeus Moss is intriguing. Caleb Wilson is intriguing. Marcus Ball is a guy that I would not sleep on just because of the fact that they brought him in here early. As soon as the season was over and Rivera got the job, it was one of the first guys that Ron Rivera brought in here as a free agent signee was Marcus Ball. So that's pretty interesting to me, to say the least. So we'll see what happens with that. But in any event, tight end position is one that I think most Redskins fans are looking at intently, wondering what the Redskins are going to do. Are they going to keep 4? Are they going to keep 3? I think the answer is 3. But again, time will tell. Different set of circumstances than Ron had in Carolina with expanded rosters. And so maybe that expanded roster leads to an extra guy, at the tight end position that they decide to keep. We'll see. I don't know what they will ultimately decide to do. So with that being said, we've eclipsed the 2-hour mark. So I'm going to go ahead and glide to the side. It's been an eventful night, to say the least, with the news of Quinton Dunbar to start the show. We talked tight ends tonight, and we got to talk about Aaron Colvin a bit. Redskins re-signed Aaron Colvin. Remember, he was on the roster last year. Redskins signed him midpoint of the season last year or so. Really didn't have an impact last year. We'll see what that means for him in the mix this upcoming season. But nonetheless, another great show. I thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys in the comment section for supporting. Thank you for all the super chats once again tonight. Look forward to chopping it up with you guys in the future. I'm thinking about doing some videos centered around the draft and teams and how they got better, NFC East, that sort of thing. So eventually that will take place. We'll come on live on this platform and do that. Try to get all the fan bases together in one centralized area and have a debate about the teams in the division and who got better, who got worse, and kind of talk about that. And that may be a little bit down the road, but I'm going to do that at some point. So look forward to that. If anything changes, any breaking news surrounding this team, we'll be back live. But in any event, I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Washington Redskins. Make sure you like this video. Thumbs up. There are over 300 of you guys in the comment section right now watching this video. Make sure you leave a thumbs up on your way out. Make sure you subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. Make sure you're following me on IG. Louie T Network _ is the IG handle. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. @Louie T Network is the Twitter handle. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, you guys take care of yourselves, stay safe, and make sure that you guys are keeping your eyes open. All right, stay woke. A lot of nonsense going on, man. Not everybody is taking the Rona seriously. Make sure you're taking care of you and your family. Until next time, you guys have a good one.